I'm very glad that you share so many hilarious stories with us. I want to ask two questions actually. First is that how do you handle those bad comments? I mean, those critics, they're very, very, mean or demanding. Maybe sometimes you just write something you think is really, really good, but, they don't buy it. So how?
I don't pay attention to I read the good reviews, and the bad reviews I read and I go, I mean, you can't, once your book is out there, you can't worry too much about it, Somebody will like it, somebody won't like it. And, I read the ones where it may not always be totally favorable to try to get a feel for what it is that they didn't like, And maybe they're making a valid point, or maybe they're not, or maybe he's just an idiot, as was the case with one of the reviewers I can think of, And so you have to judge it on the basis of what is being said, and look at what could be valid, what isn't valid, and what is just, a waste of your time. I mean, you're the writer, right? You have to have confidence in your own work.
Writers have very big ego, so when you get a bad review, you just say, wrong. But, I remember, have you heard of a writer called James Clavell? He's a very famous American writer, and he likes to write about Hong Kong. So I read his books, and they make me so angry, because everything is wrong. And, in the movie of one of his books, he takes a tram from Hong Kong to Kowloon. Okay, you can't take a tram from Hong Kong to Kowloon. But also in his books, the Chinese characters always talk about the Westerners as round eyes, and I think that's so stupid. We don't talk about Westerners as round eyes. Yeah, and anyway, so once he had a new book out, so I wrote a review of it, and I wrote a really mean review by just writing the whole review in his dialogue. So I said, that round-eyed barbarian, which is what he always calls white people, has written a new book. And so wrote the whole review in his style. Anyway, the next week, James Clavell was on TV in America, and someone asked him the same question you just asked: do you ever get upset about book reviews? And he said, no, except for this one. And he pulled out my review, and he started to read it. This guy in Hong Kong thinks this is how I write, So anyway, I sent him my book, and I said, look, you can get your revenge. You can review my book. Anyway, unfortunately, he died. So I don't know if it was just like shock at getting a bad review or something, but yeah, but he didn't. He died a few days later. Yeah, so very sad. Not really.
Okay, for poetry, if you are reviewed at all, you are fortunate. Most poets, they are really just ignored, in some places. So in Hong Kong, I think we're already quite fortunate.
So I have another question that, what do you think of social network plays in creating creative writings in English or in other language? Because we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have QQ Zoom when I was using, and many people just post and repost what they have write many small pieces or long essays on it, and people just post and repost it. So what do you think of this kind of writing can be treated as also creative writing? And that's all.
Well, I think social media is a media, just like the book is a media, just like film is a media. And, in all media, you have writing that is worth reading and writing that is just crap. Now, social media, because it's so prevalent and it's so easy, anybody can write something. You can ignore 99% of it, But finding the 1% that is good, that's the key. But that's not that different from the book. Just go to I remember as a child, I went to the City Hall Public Library. I used to borrow a book a week there, or a couple of books a week. and I would look at shelves and shelves of all these English language books, and I would think, who are these people? You know, you've never heard of them again. You know, just because they once wrote and published a book doesn't mean it lasts. So I think the same thing is true for social media. It's another venue, it's another media, it's just another place. It's the message that counts. It's the content that matters, not where you post it or where you publish it.
I think you should use it for practice, you know, like I said before, like QQ or Facebook, you know, just to get regular writing. But when you want to write your book, you have to turn it off. You know, you have to turn it off for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 months to actually write your book, because because you know what will happen. You'll write 2 lines of your book, and then you'll say, I wonder if I got any Facebook messages. And you check your Facebook, and you spend 6 hours replying to your Facebook messages, and then you go back and write 1 more line of your book. You know, so I need to often apologize to my friends because I have to turn off the email, unplug my computer, write a book, and then after a few weeks, I plug it back in, and then I spend a full day writing apologies. Often I get a letter from my boss. Dear boss, sorry I did not reply to your email 2 weeks ago. You know, I write so many of those because that's the only way to write books, you know, is to just turn off the Facebook, you know.
I think I'd like to add to that too, that writing is only one part of it. If it isn't read, what you have written actually, doesn't go anywhere. So I think that is very important to remember.
And I think this question is for this gentleman. What do you really want to do?
What do I really want to do?
And I mean that usually that you are a newspaper man before you become a writer, and it's come to my mind that the greatest novelist in my mind, Jin Yong, was used to be a newspaper man in Hong Kong too. And personally, I think many people become writers accidentally. And also, you are talking about a student in university. We are always thinking about our careers. I think that some of us want to be a writer. I just want all of you give us some advices to a young man that want to be a writer. Thank you.
I think that's a good question. Well, I told you what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a tree. I mean, it's a really good question, is making a living. Like, one thing I noticed when I was a young writer is that poets, like Agnes, were always very happy, but novelists were always sad. And I couldn't work out why this was. And eventually I realized that novelists expect to earn a good living from their books. But poets don't. Poets always have other jobs, because nobody's going to make any money writing poems, so they always have proper jobs. Whereas novelists don't. They think, I'm a novelist, I should be rich and famous. And they're very puzzled all the time. Why am I not rich and famous? And so, I mean, my advice to you as or any young writer is actually, your parents are right. If they want you to be an accountant or engineer, be an accountant or an engineer, and secretly write your book. And then write your second book, and write your third book. And usually around your 5th book, you are starting to get a lot of readers, you're starting to get a bit famous. Then you go to your boss or your engineering company or your accounting company and you say, I quit, I hate you. And then it's fine because you have another job, But like with any creative job, like singing or dancing, has to be a hobby first. And later, it has to be, Now, I can tell from your look that you are an engineer, correct?
I do think that to be a writer, the first thing I tell people is, well, write. You've got to write. you set aside the time to write, you carve out part of your life. I started writing very young, but for 18 years I had a career in marketing. Now, late in life, I decided I was going to teach creative writing. I don't know why that happened, but I did. Now, I fell into teaching creative writing by accident. But I think that the key is figuring out that balance, but to take yourself seriously as a writer if that's what you want to do. I mean, even if it's a serious hobby, even if you're not going to make money from it right away, you just do it regardless of what else. And I took myself fairly seriously, fairly young as a writer. I just decided I want to do this. So I did it. I didn't make very much money. The first time I tried to quit my job, I've tried to quit my job like 3 times, you know, so I keep finding an alternate source of income again. But the first time I quit, I made 70 pounds that year. I sold 1 story to the BBC. And at the end of that year, I said, well, that wasn't enough to keep a cockroach alive. So I think perhaps I'll go to graduate school, which is what I did. I got a master's degree, you know. But, you know, you figure out how to work out that balance along the way. But the thing is, you just don't stop writing. I've never stopped. I've done it no matter what job I've had. And you know, my corporate work was, you know, the 80 hours a week, a lot of travel and all that. Write on planes, I'd write, you know, in hotel rooms, and I'd write all the time. You figure it out somehow. You really do.
For me, I would suggest that if you are starting out writing, don't ever forget that it is the writing itself that gives the greatest joy. And if you forget that, if you think that, oh, I write because I want to be rich and famous, most people don't become rich, and most people become a little bit famous, but don't let that get into your system, because then if you depend too much on what other people think of your writing, then you may be writing to the audience, and you may also be unhappy if people don't like your writing. Whereas if you write because you really want to organize something, and as a method of self-actualization in a way, then you will never lose. If people like to read it, okay, fine. But if not, at least you have made something clear to yourself.
Are there any more questions? Because we're just about at the end of our session.